Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and to this time-lapse version of Betty the Labrador. What a gorgeous dog to work on. I hope that you enjoy seeing it come together in this speedy version here on YouTube. If you do, then please do remember to hit subscribe if you haven't already. And of course, if you'd like to see the real-time version, I will be releasing this as a big series of tutorials over on my Patreon. So for this piece, it's 18 by 14 inches, so a reasonably big size. And I'm using the Kansen Me Tint Velvet paper, which I've been using quite a lot recently. And I'm especially enjoying it for the pet portraits. I think it's got quite a similar appearance to my old favourite Hahnemühle velour paper, in that it looks quite 3D. It really takes the colours nicely and it allows my pastel colours to look extra rich. And another paper that I tend to use a lot is, of course, Clairefontaine's Pastel Matte. But my main grumble about this paper, I suppose, is that sometimes I feel it ends up looking a little bit flat. Like my vibrant colours don't look quite as vibrant on this paper. But hey, there are pros and cons to each pastel paper, and you've just got to find where your preferences lie and what it is that you want from the portrait. So in this case, I've painted a few other dogs for this same client. And in the earlier days, I was using mostly Hahnemühle velour paper. And so I kind of want these more recent ones to fit into their collection nicely. And so the velvet paper is my choice at the moment. And for the background, you can see that I am really trying to simplify what I can see in the reference. I love to include the background, I love to include the setting and create more of a story for the portrait. But sometimes I opt for this more out of focus, blurred effect in the background. And I love to do that for a pet portrait, especially because it really makes all of the crisp detail in the main subject just pop out even more. I'm using mostly Unison soft pastels and a few Terry Ludwigs as well, actually. I've got some lovely Terry Ludwig greens and dark colours. And then, as you'll see in the dog, I'm still making use of the bigger pastel sticks mostly, but I will also bring in some pastel pencil for the smaller details. My aim, however, is to try and capture as much of the detail using my soft sticks as possible. The richness of the pigment, the colour that you get from the soft sticks. And I also just really enjoy the application of the soft sticks. And you can see that I'm not using big chunky pieces of pastel all the time. I've got all sorts of different shapes and sizes of pastel as they wear down naturally into different shapes. And if you've watched any of my videos before, you'll also hear me talk about breaking pastels when I need a sharp edge. But each little crumb of pastel pigment is useful right to the very end. And quite often it's my lighter colours that I have a large selection of pebbles and shards, as it's often those lighter tints and those lighter colours where I'm applying highlights and therefore possibly smaller marks needed. But in my lower layers, I really focus on finding the colours that I can see shining through from underneath. So I come in quite dark in some areas to begin with. Even on this type of light coloured dog, we have a lot of light and shade happening. So if I want to create the contrast in the light and shade, I really have to think about my colour choices. And you can see some of the colours that I've laid in on the left side of the face so far. We've got a lot of shadow coming down the whole left side of the dog. And you're even going to see quite a lot of green used within the coat of the Labrador. A lot of the time, if you've got bright sunlight in your photo reference, it's quite likely that you're going to find some reflected colours bouncing around the painting. And in this case, I am really seeing a lot of green within the shadows of Betty's coat. And that is not a surprise at all, because just look at the zingy green grass around her, the green bushes behind. So the main colours that Betty is surrounded by here are green from obviously all the greenery, and the blue of the sky as well. So a bright sunny day, a bright blue sky, all of that is going to have an effect on Betty's coat. And Betty is a light colour, so there's lots of opportunity for colour to bounce off Betty's light coloured coat. But then I also find the same with a dark coloured animal. You're going to get the sheen of the coat reflecting all of the colours from their surroundings. So perhaps if I were making the background of this plane and I wasn't including all of the greenery and all of the colours around her, perhaps I wouldn't include so much of it in her coat. But because I'm including the background, I feel like it's extra important to include those other colours. It really sets Betty in her environment, and I think it helps us believe the realism a little better because of the fact that our brains are pretty clever when we look at something like this. The green may not jump out of the photo reference, but our brains tend to accept where those colours are coming from without even questioning it. And I think as an artist, part of what we do is we question it. We look at these colours and we try to decide how much of that we want to include in our painting. In my case, I really look for those extra colours within a subject like this. And if I can kind of explain to myself where those colours are coming from, I always find it much easier to see them and to trust my instincts and actually use those extra colours in the portrait. So analysing your photo reference is really important. Figure out where the source of light is coming from, what direction it's coming from. Have a look at the background colours. Can you see any of those colours within your main subject? Because each time you can include some of those background colours in your main subject, you are just further helping the colour harmony within your painting. Just tying it all together using your colour choices. So the main thing I had to remember here was just to look for those bigger shapes of light and shade, and to not allow any of my brighter colours to come into the shadow areas. So coming right down this left side of the body now as well. A big block of shadow area. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I will be releasing all of Betty's portrait as a real-time tutorial series. And that is where I take you step by step through the whole process. You can either watch along or work along with me. There will be color codes popping up to let you know what colors I'm using, because of course as I progress my pastel sticks look a little bit grubby, and sometimes it's hard to see on screen what color I'm actually using. And then of course I'll also be with you all the way through this project with the narration, just explaining my color choices, chatting about the types of marks that I'm making, giving you as many hints and tips along the way as I can. And not that long ago, I painted another beautiful Labrador for the same client, and that was the chocolate version. So within my tutorials library, there are quite a few of this type of breed already, different colors, and it's such a good breed to learn from because we've got really interesting things going on in a Labrador's coat. Sometimes the shorter coats are extra tricky to capture, not only on the face, but here on the body as well. You think that you're almost at the end of a portrait, and then you're faced with the chest area or the body, the front of the dog especially. There's always so much detail here, the different directions that the fur is going, all of these swirling patterns. And I find that really satisfying to work on. So I like to give the body, legs and paws, all those sorts of extra parts of a portrait. I like to give them as much of my attention as I did on the face with the main features. So a very satisfying portrait to work on. Absolutely love working on this scale. It just gives me a bit more space for detail and to get such a beautifully detailed reference image to work from as well. An absolute joy to look at Betty, and I hope that you've enjoyed seeing her come together here, even though it is the speeded up version. I do try to release some real-time stuff here on YouTube as well, but if real-time tutorials are what you're after, then please do come and check me out over on Patreon. I have an enormous library of tutorials. But thanks very much for watching this here. And until next time, happy pasteling.